Micron, the US chip maker, specializes in a thing called high bandwidth memory. And apparently, if you are making those things these days, you can practically name your price. There's a huge shortage amid massive demand for artificial intelligence equipment. Let's get more from William Kerwin, a senior equity analyst in technology at Morningstar Research Services. William, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Let's check out MU stock. The chip business, famously cyclical, and it looks like for HBM chips, there's an upswing right now.
There is certainly an upswing right now. It is driving immense demand for these HBM chips from Micron. It's also a very supply constrained type of product, which is really boosting the prices in the market. That helps Micron's overall revenue. It also helps their profitability. And what we saw from the quarter that printed last night was that the guidance for the next quarter really blew our estimates out of the water. And we credit a lot of that to this supply constrained, strong pricing environment that's really boosting, again, that revenue and profitability.
It is interesting, though. The stock was up, as I'm sure you know, immediately after they announced the results in the aftermarket, but now slipping a bit. I guess it's had a massive run already this year.
Yeah, the stock has almost doubled year to date so far in 2025. And we think a lot of upside to existing estimates was already being priced into the stock coming into the print tonight. So while we raised our estimates, we raised our valuation on Micron to $150 a share. We think that all of this upside was already being estimated into the stock by investors, and that's resulting in the tepid reaction this morning.
Now, you think that eventually, eventually companies will bring new high bandwidth memory capacity online. They'll start making more of their devices, and it's sort of like cotton or canola. The price will just come down.
We see typical memory chips, so outside of HBM, DRAM, NAND memory, as commodities. And so in DRAM, you have three major producers: Micron, SK Hynix out of Korea, and Samsung. And in HBM, up to this point, it's really only been SK Hynix and Micron. Now, we expect Samsung to get qualified in on the cutting edge of these chips and be that third major player. We don't really see it broadening out from those three, but even just those three competing can help bring the price down, as you said. And so that does temper our expectations for these currently high levels of profitability to last longer term. We think they'll come down.
And what is distinctive about Micron? Do they have a technological lead, for example?
We don't think so when it comes to the competition with those two companies I mentioned before, Hynix and Samsung. Now, certainly these three, when it comes to DRAM chips, when it comes to HBM, are well ahead of any other potential peer. But when we think of competition amidst the three, we see generally fungible products with NVIDIA's GPUs being able to use HBM from the likes of Hynix or from the likes of Micron. We don't see a ton of differentiation in this market longer term.
And so for fiscal 2025, you see these high bandwidth memory devices as only about 16% of Micron's total sales. So is the stock being unduly inflated by a product that's only a portion of their revenue?
Well, it's a small portion of their revenue, but it's been an immense portion of their growth. You know, 16% in fiscal 2025, up from, I think, 3 or 4% in fiscal 2024 by our estimates. And we have that mix as a percent of revenues rising pretty quickly over our forecast. So really, the way we value it is about what that percentage is going to go towards over the next 3 to 5 years, and it is definitely rising.
And just remind, does Micron make its own devices, or do they get the likes of Taiwan Semi to produce them?
A little bit of both, but we typically think of Micron as being vertically integrated. So yeah, a lot of manufacturing. It's a U.S. company. They have a lot of manufacturing in the U.S. as well. And so even when we call a chip maker vertically integrated, there will be some mix of both, but they do a lot of this themselves.
And if I'm building a data center to crunch AI computing, is it a big expense for me, these high bandwidth memory chips?
It is. And so these high bandwidth memory chips, or HBM as I've been calling them, what they do is they're actually one piece of the GPUs or the accelerators from the likes of NVIDIA. And so they'll go straight onto those chips along with some computing processors. And we do think they are one of the most expensive pieces of the bill of materials for those chips. A lot has been said about NVIDIA being able to carry high pricing and high margins. And a lot of that comes from the integration of this HBM.
Fascinating, though. Generally, just give us a broad thought, William. Do you think is there any sign of investor enthusiasm getting overdone for companies that make devices used in AI computing?
We certainly see some froth when we look at valuations across the space, but it really depends company to company. And like I said earlier on Micron specifically, we thought there were some pretty high upside expectations baked into the stock coming into last night. We think those upside expectations were realized, and that led us to raise our valuation up to $150. So we see the stock as mostly fairly valued today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, William.
Thank you.
William Kerwin, Senior Equity Analyst in Technology at Morningstar Research Services.